Hi guys!
That's not our intro.
Yay! I swear we're not intoxicated in any way. It's just 10
It's
o'clock in the morning.
literally 11 a.m.
It's 11 a.m. and we've never recorded this early in our entire lives. So we're a little
Yeah, we usually
delusional
record
right
at
now.
night, so it's a little funny.
Yeah, staying up till 2 in the morning. Recording Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, you know? But anyways, welcome to Telly Talk, where we don't talk about what's on the telly because it's actually book talk, and we're talking about The Secret History, one of my favorite books, and one of your future favorite books. We read chapter 1 and 2 in the last episode, so go watch that if you
So go
haven't
watch that if you haven't
read
yet.
about
Yeah, sorry.
anything about this book. Today we're talking about chapters 3 and 4, and let's just dive right in. Do you want to start with your notes? Should we just like go in
Uh,
order with like the things you want to
can,
talk about, and then
can we
we
just
can
do a
kind of
really
like
quick summary of chapter 3 before I start my chapter 3 notes?
sure. So chapter 3 is winter is the fall semester's coming to a close, right? So they have all they kind of chat about where they're going for the winter. Henry and Bunny are going to Italy for the summer. Francis is going back to his home. He spends winter in New York and Boston. The twins are going to their grandma's house in Virginia, and Richard doesn't want to go home because his parents have essentially forgotten about him, because literally in the first page of chapter 3 he says that his mom replaced his room with a sewing room. So like they clearly don't give a shit about him anymore. So he decided to stay in Hampton for the winter. He kind of had to find where he was going to stay because he can't stay at the school because the dorms are closed. So he found this guy, this old like hippie guy, and he stayed at this warehouse that the hippie lives at. And he is required, he can live there for free as long as he makes like mandolins or something. The guy is like a instrument craftsman, but like not really. I doubt he works a day in his life. But Richard has to like carve tuning pegs or something in order to stay there for free. And Richard works for the same professor. What was his name? The professor, Professor Dr. Rowland, the psychology professor. He works for him for the summer, but at a lower pay because it's during the summer, so there's not that much work. And Richard ends up just staying, like sitting in the library or just in the building until the janitors kick him out. Because during the winter, in Vermont winter, especially up in the Northeast, it's like freezing fucking cold. And this is before global warming has really done its thing yet. So it's like a full-fledged icy winter. So that man is living in this warehouse, and this warehouse is not insulated at all. So it's just as cold as it is inside than it is outside. And his room has a hole in the roof, so he's just absolutely dying of cold. He eventually gets like super bad frostbite and pneumonia, to the point where he is just literally about to die. And he's alone this entire winter. And near the end of the winter, I feel like around like early January, Dr. Rowland's like, I keep seeing your friend around town. And Richard's like, no, my friends aren't here. Like, they're out of town. They're back home. And he's like, no, that big tall guy. I've seen him. And he's like, Henry? No, he's not here. And then Richard almost dies from pneumonia or frostbite or something, and he is literally about to like pass out and essentially die. And he sees Henry's shadow, and he's like, Henry? And then Henry actually is there. He shows up to the warehouse, and he's like, I found you. What the fuck happened to you? And so Henry takes him to the hospital, and they Henry, honestly, this chapter made me like Henry even more because Henry was so sweet to Richard. He stayed with him at the hospital. He paid for his hospital stay. He would like advocate for Henry because there's this one nurse that was like essentially fucking abusing him.
Bitch.
every time she would come in and, like, take blood or something, she would just, like, stab him a million times. And Henry, like, took the nurse out and, like, gave her a stern talking to, which I thought was actually hot. And then there was also,
Richard thought it was hot, too.
He did. And Henry also, like, the doctor said something that was, like, embarrassing or something. Or no, it was, like, the doctor had told Richard something, and then Richard told Henry, and then Henry said something, like, something weird. And then Richard says, I was so embarrassed, and I never mentioned it again. I think he did save me, though, in some place. If there is a place where all the lists are kept and credit is given, I'm sure he has a gold star by his name. But I am getting sentimental. Sometimes when I think about these things, I do. So it's like, Richard is literally so thankful that Henry has saved his life. And, Richard ends up moving in with Henry just until the spring semester starts. So for about a couple weeks. Bunny comes back from Italy because Henry left Italy early, and we don't know why. And Henry and Bunny don't really go into it. Henry's just like, I just left. And Bunny comes back, and he shows up to Henry's house, but Henry's not there, only Richard is. Richard lets him in, and he's like, how was Italy? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, why did Henry leave early? And Bunny says some things that aren't very nice about Henry. Actually, before Bunny comes home, Henry, like, he asks Henry, like, why did he leave early? And then he goes into how Bunny's actually broke. Like, he's poor. His family's actually bankrupt, even though they present themselves as, like, super rich and elegant, but they're actually, like, they have no money.
I called last episode, by the way.
Yes, you did.
Were you proud of me? Like, I knew you wouldn't confirm if I was right or not, but were you proud that I figured it out?
Yeah. He's poor as fuck, so that's, like, one of the reasons why he borrows money from everyone, and, like, makes people pay. He doesn't have any money for him. I feel like also his parents just, like, don't give him money. Like, even if they did have money, I feel like they just wouldn't give Bunny money.
That's
for some
the
reason
vibe.
or another. And so he's just like, them being broke on top of that kind of just is like, damn, that sucks, man.
He's so similar to Richard, but also like the opposite of Richard.
Yeah. He's like if Richard grew up with privilege. But like, Bunny comes back and like sits down with Henry or Richard and is like talking about him and is like, Henry's not what he seems. Like, he's a totally different guy. Like, you don't even know him. Like,
that's in chapter 4. Are we giving a summary of both right now?
Am I in chapter 4?
It's the very beginning of chapter 4 when Bunny says that Henry isn't what anyone thinks he is.
Okay, I'll scoot back a little. But
scoot back.
Okay, so Henry comes back to the house, and Bunny's like, hey, I'm here, and Henry's like, oh, you're here. And then he's like, how's Richard been? I heard he's been going through it. And Henry's like, he's fine, how are you? And Bunny's like, I hear you've been taking in a sick. This is a quote from the book on page 131. He says, I hear you've been taking in a sick, said Bunny, winking at me. Conscience been hurting you? Thought you'd better rack up a couple good deeds? Henry didn't say anything, and I'm sure at that moment he would have looked perfectly impassive.
Oh my god, that's a crazy line, having read chapter 4. You need to read chapter 4 and then go back and reread chapter 3, because all of chapter 3, honestly, probably reread chapter 2 as well. It all hits so much crazier. Go reread chapters 1 through 3 after reading chapter 4, and everything makes sense all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, actually, you should, after you finish part 1, which is after chapter 5, you should just reread it. Because I'm going to mention some things that happen in, like, chapter 1 and 2, that you're going to be like, oh my god, that's why he was doing that. And so, to finish the quote, he said, he would look perfectly impassive to anyone who didn't know him, but I could tell he was quite agitated. And he sits there and tries to dismiss Bunny away. And later down the page it says, Henry's like, I have an appointment in town. And then Bunny says, with a lawyer? And then he starts laughing really loud. And Richard's kind of just like sitting there like, what is happening right now? And Henry's like, no, with an optometrist. And
oh my god, I need to get my highlighter out. This is crazy on a reread.
And you said you were reading it closely.
Well, I am, but it's just like, you don't even know until you know.
No, you don't. And that's why I'm here. And then they Richard drives Henry to the optometrist, and then Richard's like, here we are, and then Henry's like, what? And then is like, no, keep driving. And then they kind of just like exist for the rest of that chapter. At the end of the chapter,
there's the end.
Richard
hit the end.
Yeah, Richard moves back into the dorms. And then Henry asks Richard to call Bunny to invite him over to talk.
And then also Richard overhears Francis and Henry arguing about something, but it's not clear what.
We don't know what. And you can't even really make out with the little things that she gives us.
Okay, should we start with my notes?
Also, I just want to preface, the people that are back in town are Henry, Bunny, and Francis. We have not seen the twins yet. And then, okay, actually, before you start, I just have one question. The one thing that I was confused about this chapter, and it kind of tripped me up the first time I read it too, but it's just like the weirdest thing that happened on page 132. Where it's like right after Henry takes Richard to the optometrist. The next paragraph is like, I went to bed early that night around 11 at 12. I was awakened by a loud, persistent banging at the door. And then Henry and Richard just stood in the hallway listening to this person banging on the door for like at least 30 minutes. And then he says, I felt as though I had woken in from one of those dreams in an even more remote one, some bizarre wartime bomb shelter of the unconscious. We stood there for a long time, it seemed.
That was a really weird detail that didn't clear itself up.
Yeah. Long after the banging stopped, we heard footsteps crunching away. Henry looked over at me and he says, it's all right now. And then they went back to bed. But, it doesn't say who it was, why that was happening.
It's implied it was Bunny.
It is implied that it's Bunny, but
because we know that Bunny bangs when he knocks. I think he just really wants to talk to Henry.
But he doesn't. Because they did that in Italy. And you know that.
But we know that Bunny does want to talk to Henry because he tells him that on page 132. He says, well, I'd like to have a little chat with you. And Henry's like, well, I'm busy right now. And Bunny's like, well, how about tonight? And Henry's like, okay, tonight. And then that night is when the banging thing happened.
Oh, I guess, yeah.
So it was Bunny coming to have his talk with Henry, but it was weird because it happened at fucking 2 a.m. And Henry just was like, we're just going to wait until he leaves. But I don't know why Henry and Richard had to be out of bed for that. I don't know why they couldn't have just stayed in bed. I don't understand the point of them.
And they stood there for 30 minutes.
I don't understand the point of them waiting in the hallway for Bunny to leave, but it was Bunny who wants to talk to Henry.
I also like to picture, because Henry doesn't like electricity, so he uses kerosene lamps.
Which is so funny.
And I just picture him in one of those old-timey nightgowns and caps.
Nightgowns,
just,
yeah.
A little lantern.
He's fucking Scrooge. Dude.
Yeah, that's what I picture him just in the hallway, just holding his lamp. And then
Henry
Richard just walking
is a young Ebenezer Scrooge.
What the fuck is happening? And he just stands there for 20 minutes, and you're just what is happening right now? That was the one thing I was confused about this chapter. It's just who was banging? Why was that happening? But I guess we cleared that up.
We cleared it up. I mean, I still don't understand why they're waiting in the fucking hallway, but other than that, we cleared it up. Okay.
I think it's because they didn't want to move. Like, after they already got out there, they didn't want to move, so he would, like...
They're like, we gotta be frozen.
Like,
but then why are you having a fucking lantern on? Like, if I was trying to hide from someone knocking on my door, I wouldn't be standing right behind the door with a lantern.
They weren't standing in the door, they were standing in the hallway, which is probably not in front of the door. Because they say, like, later on, when they're trying to, like, hide from Bunny in the house, they're, like, hiding behind the wall and shit. And, like, trying to look out the window, you know?
Yeah.
So I doubt they were just, like, standing in front of the door.
So, chapter 3 begins, page 104. For those of you who are joining us here and did not go back and watch our first episode, Soul has read this entire book before, and I am reading it as we go. So, you get both perspectives here.
Yes.
As a listener.
Yes.
Chapter 3 begins.
But I'm trying so hard not to spoil anything that is not...
You're doing an amazing job, because I've predicted some things correctly and some things incorrectly, and you've given me, like, no indication either way.
Yeah, and do you want to share what you did?
No, I'm ashamed.
No, you have to share what you did.
I'll share what I did when we start talking about chapter 4, okay?
Fine.
Because it'll come up then. I did a bad. Anyway.
You did a real bad.
I'm sorry. Chapter 3 gets set up. We find out that the school they go to, Hampton, it's very far north in Vermont, and the buildings are old, and they're expensive to heat, so the school is closed all of January and February. I think that that's crazy, for one, that they just don't have school those months, because that must mean they must, like, their second term must go pretty late into the year. Like, I'm done with my second semester by the end of April, but they don't even start till March. Like, that's halfway done for me, so they must go through, like, June.
Yeah.
But this also indicates the time period. Like, I just feel like that wouldn't happen now. Like, they wouldn't be like, oh, it's too cold in Vermont, no school. Like,
I just feel like if they had school earlier, it would just, like, there'd be so many snow days, it would just be, like, pointless. So that's probably why they pushed it farther down. But now that global warming exists, you can have school all year round, because there's no snow
and, like, was this
anywhere.
not a problem for them in December? Surely December and January are pretty similar, like, weather-wise.
Yeah, I feel like they went out. I feel like their school ended, like, yeah, December 17th, all final papers were due, so that's, like, mid-December.
I guess. But that's how you could tell this took place, like, 50 years ago, because...
Yeah.
That wouldn't happen today. I highlighted this on page 105, that... Henry and Bunny were going to Italy over the winter vacation. The two of them had been out of sorts for over a month. Henry in particular. Bunny, I knew, had been hitting him hard for money in the past weeks, but Henry seemed oddly incapable of refusing him, and that there was tension going on between them. And I highlighted that because I knew it was important, but I didn't know why. And now... Yes. For those of you listening,
why in chapter 4.
Chapter 4, I'm just going to share the one detail that makes everything make sense. In chapter 4, we learn that Henry and the rest of the gang, without Bunny there, accidentally killed a man.
Not Richard. Richard's not included in that.
Yes. Richard is none the wiser currently, and Bunny was not there for the event. But Henry killed a man, and the rest of them were there. And on accident.
Actually, it's not just Henry that did it.
Yeah, it's... there's an unclear series of events because they were all fucking insane.
Yeah.
But they killed a man, and we find out in chapter 4, like, why those lines I just read, like, are going on. But we don't know right now. But I was just like, that's important. And then I reread it when I was taking my notes for this podcast, and I was like, holy shit. Holy shit. I know why Bunny and Henry have been out of sorts for over a month, and why Bunny's been asking Henry for a lot of money, and why Henry can't refuse him. I know what's going on now.
Yes.
Also on page 105, we have Francis telling Richard that he'd be happy to have him at Christmas at his home in Boston, and that's gay as fuck.
I think that's just being friendly.
No, they're gay for each other, and you know it.
Okay, sorry. I mean, hey, wait till part 2.
Oh my god. I don't know how this book could get gayer.
Listen, it gets a whole lot gayer in part 2. You're not ready for it. You're not ready for it.
Another detail that I enjoyed reading, on page 107, we already know that Bunny has dyslexia, and then we also find out that Bunny has a very short attention span, and dyslexia and ADHD often go together, and I just think that Bunny has ADHD. It fits with everything we know about him.
Oh, he definitely does.
I know it's not, like, stated, but, like, everything we know about Bunny, and then
100%.
those details. Bunny has ADHD. I also, this is skipping ahead a little bit, but I just skipping ahead to when, basically, all of chapter 3 is Richard is very cold and lonely. That's a chapter. I know this is written in the style of a classic because it takes the entire chapter to make the point. Richard is very cold.
Wait, can I say something that's gay?
Yes.
So on page 106, at the bottom of, like, the last paragraph, it says, he's described, like, Henry was talking about the school, and then Richard just says, his voice was dreamy and quiet, but I was filled with uncertainty. In the winters where I lived, I did not even know snow. And I like that he described Henry's voice as dreamy and quiet, because I feel like he was just, like, lulling over his voice.
That's cute.
Yay.
So, like a classic, I always say, at the beginning of A Tale of Two Cities, it takes them 3 pages to say they were going uphill and it was muddy.
Yes.
And this is just like that. It's just the entire chapter is Richard is very cold. He's like he's so cold it's killing him. Like, this is like a type of cold that, like, words can't even describe. But boy, does the author try to make words describe it. This is like the coldest cold you can picture. It's written beautifully, so unlike a classic, it actually holds my attention and, like, I enjoy reading it. Page 118 describes it beautifully. It says, I wandered from light to light until that dreaded hour when all the doors closed, and, stepping from the world of warmth and people and conversation overheard, I felt the old familiar cold twist through my bones again, and then it was all forgotten. The warmth, the lights. I had never been warm in my life, ever. Richard is very cold.
That was beautiful.
That's a beautiful quote. But while Richard is this cold, he's, like, kind of going crazy. He's hallucinating a bit, or so we think, but you think he's hallucinating Henry, but Henry is actually there, but I don't know if he was hallucinating other things. But he has these odd habits. Every time he crosses the river, he has to stop and scoop up a rock and drop it to make sure over the river to make sure he has a safe crossing. And
I love that.
He freaks out whenever he, like, goes up the stairs in the place that he's staying, and just, like, everything, he keeps having, like, intrusive thoughts about himself dying. Yeah, and I just want to say that Richard has OCD. This is what OCD is, having to do weird compulsions to make sure that, like, something bad doesn't happen, and having intrusive thoughts about the bad things happening. I don't know if this is intentional.
I like the fact that when he would hide in the buildings before he got kicked out, he says, I became an expert at making myself invisible. And then after he would, like, throw the rock into the river, he would say, it's for, like, a gift to the river god for safe crossing, or perhaps some attempt to prove to it that I, though invisible, did exist.
Yeah.
And I like that.
I like that too. So, as someone who has been diagnosed with OCD since age 11, I just want to say that Richard has OCD, and it's not like a stereotypical portrayal of OCD, but in my opinion, it's actually a more accurate portrayal than, like, stereotypical portrayals. Richard isn't like, oh my god, germs, I gotta keep things clean, which is really stereotypical, but just, like, everything that he's doing is textbook what OCD actually is. Yeah. He has obsessions and compulsions, and it's very clear to me. And I don't know if this is intentional on the author's part, but this is, like, a very accurate portrayal of what OCD is, in my opinion.
I also forgot to mention that when he was living in his warehouse, he did try to fix the hole in the roof in his room, and he almost fell off the roof and died, because the warehouse is, like, right next to a dam, and he almost fell off the roof into the dam and almost died. So he actually almost died twice this chapter. So.
Dude. He keeps almost dying. And then it's just funny because he's not the people who actually die in the book. Page 109, there's a very interesting passage where Bunny invites Richard over to help him pack, and Bunny just lies. What?
Can we go over Bunny's essay? I want to talk about his essay.
Yeah, can I say this really quick and then we do that?
Yes.
Richard is like, ooh, a framed Japanese print. And Bunny's like, don't touch that, it's 200 years old. And this pisses Richard off because he knows that this isn't true because he saw Bunny taking it out of a book in the library. And he's so annoyed about this that he leaves, but then he feels bad, so he gives Bunny, like, an apology gift. But, like, that passage just really stuck out to me.
No, Bunny sends him an apology.
Oh,
it says,
I read that wrong.
I found an awkward note of an apology wrapped around a paperback of Rupert Brooke poems.
I read that incorrectly. Thank you. So I thought he felt bad for leaving.
No, Bunny apologized for being an ass.
Interesting. I'm surprised.
Yeah, me too.
But I found that passage so interesting that, like, Bunny is such a liar, and that adds to, I didn't know at the time because this doesn't get confirmed till later in chapter 3 that Bunny is broke, but it added to my, like, list of reasons that I think Bunny doesn't actually have any money, that he pretends to have this, like, fancy old Japanese art that he just fucking took out of a library book, but, like, framed it like it was important. And it's like, that's, like, something that, like, rich people own, and he wants to be like, look, I have framed fancy foreign art, and it added to my Bunny is broke theory. And I'm so happy that I was right about that.
Yeah.
I picked up on the details. It was subtle, and I knew.
You knew from the start. You knew.
Mm-hmm. I was like, he wears the same jacket every day. He doesn't have any money. He's just like Richard.
He's poor man.
I clock him as poor.
But, like, some rich people are, like, humble, and they're like, hey, I have, like, one good jacket, like, it's fine.
But does
like,
Bunny give humble to you?
No, he doesn't.
Okay, talk about his essay.
Okay, so before they had to leave for winter, they had to turn in their final papers. And Bunny had to write this, like, 25-page paper on this guy named John Donne. John Donne? I don't know.
John Donne.
I have no idea.
Sounds like a candy bar.
Yeah. I don't know who this
like
guy
John
is.
Donne's.
But it was for the class Masterworks of English Literature. And Bunny, I doubt, has ever written a real paper in his entire life, except for this one. And even this one I wouldn't even count as a real paper. But he essentially, like, tried to get other people to kind of write it for him. But then he realized that no one was going to do it for him, so he had to do it himself. And he did it in, like, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, if I had to write a 25-page paper and it was, like, a week before it was due, I would do exactly what he did, I'm not gonna lie. They all wondered how he was gonna do it because he's not much of a writer, though through his dyslexia he was a convenient culprit of the real problem was not that, but his attention span, which was short as a child's, which is where you concluded that he has ADHD. He seldom read the required text and supplementary books of any course. Instead, his knowledge was given. So essentially, he would just make up shit about this guy and just put it into his essay, and then he would get other people to explain the topic to him, and he would take that, remember it in the wrong way, and then put that in his essay. And
hey,
so his essay,
this Bunny invented paraphrasing. You know when you, like, read a text and you're like, I gotta put this in my own words. The way to do that is to get someone else to say it to you and then put that in your own words.
Yeah.
Can't plagiarize if you're, like, 4 layers removed from the source.
There's, like, no first-hand, second-hand evidence. It's, like, third-hand, oh, I forgot, but this is what I remember evidence.
He, like, makes up memories of a thing.
Yes.
It's so funny.
Yes. And so he references, like, books like the fucking encyclopedia, which is, like, okay. And his paper ended up, like, being less about John Donne and more about just like literally
a different guy.
Anything else.
He like there was like a small acquaintanceship between John Donne and a different guy, and he like turned this into the fact that they were like lifelong best friends.
Yeah, it's like and, lifelong like, gay lovers.
They like invented something together. Like they invented a new type of science together or something, and like he just wrote his paper about that, and then like none of it. He just made it all up, but like he like convinces himself it's real.
Yeah, he said the book says. In some dim corridor of his mind, this friendship grew larger and larger until his mind, the two men were practically interchangeable. So he just, like, took the accomplishments of the other guy and just make it John's accomplishments or something. And then Henry had blamed it on men of thought and deed, but no one was for sure, like, why he was acting this way. A week or two before the paper was due, he had shown everyone... He showed up at my room at Richard's dorm at 2 or 3 in the morning. He walked in, turned on the lights, and then was like, hey, I need you to tell me about metahemeralism. And Richard's like, what the fuck is that? And he's like, I need you to explain it to me. And he's like, that's not a real word. And I looked up metahemeralism. Metahemeralism. It's not a real word, but someone on Urban Dictionary did write a definition for metahemeralism, and I would like to read it to you, and I feel like...
Yes, please.
It's unexpected, but the quotes that they use to refer to metahemeralism, I guess, will... I don't even know. I don't know. Like, it'll prove its definition. So Urban Dictionary says that metahemeralism refers to the fundamental human understanding that to be loved is to let oneself be changed from their preconceived notions of self. To love is to change others, and that is possible for you to meet the person who will cause this one day. The belief that it's possible to meet the one person you'll form an incredible bond with, platonic, usually can be romantic as well, but it will change you forever in a positive life. And then the quotes they put below, they don't put page numbers, but they just quote the character and the quote. But Bunny says, I believe in metahemeralism. And then at some point, Camilla will say, it's amazing how much Henry's changed since he met Richard. And then Charles says, I know, right? It's like if metahemeralism was personified. So at some point, they'll say that. But I think that's crazy. And so in the book at page 108, when he's asking about metahemeralism, Richard's like, I don't know what that is, it's not a real word. And then Bunny's like, I don't know what it is either. And he's like, it's got to do with art or pastoralism or something. I got to tie it together with John and his friend. And he's like, it's a real word, I promise. It has something to do with irony and the pastoralism. I should probably look up what pastoralism is. I don't know what that means. Like it has something to do with a painting or a sculpture, maybe. And then he's like, Richard's like, is it in the dictionary? And then Bunny's like, I don't know how to spell it, so I don't know. And then they talked about it for like a half hour.
I like what he says next. It really captures like what more about what we know of the book. It says, out in the open spaces, living the good life, metahemeralism. It's got to be the glue here, see? And like... Yeah. That reminds me of the Dionysus ritual. Yes,
yeah. And it says he was raving about fishing in sonnets in heaven until the middle of his monologue he would be struck by a brilliant thought and he just left. And so he finished the paper 4 days before it was due, which is honestly surprising because I don't think I've ever done that. Ran around showing it to everyone, and then he made everyone read it, except for Henry. Henry refused to read it. And they were like...
Well, my favorite thing is the fact that it was published.
I think a quote of it was published in that newspaper.
No, it's... Like, they published...
I think Richard was referring to it being published because they took a quote from him, from his paper, to be in a newspaper. So in that sense, it's published.
Yeah, But I thought they did like a whole paragraph from it. Where does it say?
And then Richard reads it.
After
and
he disappeared,
says,
a journalist asked for an excerpt from the missing young scholar's work, and Marion gave him a copy of it. A laboriously edited paragraph, which eventually found its way into People magazine.
Yeah, and so that, in that sense, it was published. It was published in a magazine.
I think that's so funny.
What
this
page
horrible
was that
paper.
On? Like the
page 107.
Yeah. And then Richard reads it and he says... This
book is like my child. This book is my prized possession.
I know, right? When Richard reads it, his last sentence, what he says about it is, all I remember about the paper was that it ended with the sentence, and as we leave Dawn and Walton, on the shores of metahemeralism, we have a fond farewell to those famous chums of yore. What the fuck is yore? Chums of yore? He speaks like he's 80 years old. Like he was born in the 30s. We wondered if he would fail, but Bunny wasn't worried. The approaching trip to Italy was the only thing like motivating him, really. And he's just so fascinating. Bunny's
a fascinating character.
Like, I can't wait until you find out a specific fact about him that isn't about him, his life. It's just like about him.
I'm
himself
so excited.
As his existence. And it's gonna be crazy.
So everyone leaves for winter break, and when Francis leaves, Richard feels a deep melancholy, and the sound of Francis' car receding and then disappearing in the snowy, muffled distance remains in his ears. And he realizes how lonely he is, and he's gay for Francis, and Francis is gay for him, and they're fucking gay. Imagine your buddy leaves for winter break, and you're like, the sound of his car receding to the distance stayed in my ears. I'm so lonely. I feel melancholy. It's gay as fuck.
But then on the next page, he's like, when Charles and Camilla are leaving, he talks about a paragraph about like simping for her. She was breathing hard, and deep circles of red burned high on her bright cheeks. In all my life, I've never seen someone so maddeningly
beautiful
as she was in that moment. I stood blinking stupidly at her, the blood pounding in my veins, and my carefully rehearsed plans for a goodbye kiss forgotten. When unexpectedly she threw her arms around me. Her hoarse breath was loud in my ear, and her cheek was like ice when she put it against mine. A moment later, when I took her gloved hand, I felt a quick pulse of her slender wrist beneath my thumb. That is the horniest thing I've ever read. And he was planning on kissing her.
Yeah. He likes women. He's
bi.
He just has
hardcore.
He has like
bi.
a lot of like homoerotic tension with all the men, even though he like very explicitly has a crush on the girl.
Yes.
I have a question. Page 111, it says, the wind kicked up in little eddies on the ground. What are eddies?
Where does it say that?
Middle of page 111.
Only the hiss of the powdery snow that the wind kicked up in the little eddies on the ground. The little eddies?
What are little eddies?
What the fuck are little eddies?
Like, that's what I call my edibles, but I'm certain that's not what this means.
Give me my little Eddie. Having a little Eddie as a little late night treat. Let me look.
I was confused and I couldn't figure. I think I looked it up and I couldn't find it, so I wanted to know if you could find it. While you're looking, then everyone is left now, and he's...
Wait a minute.
What?
The hiss of the powdery snow. Wait a minute. Okay, this might actually well, no. Okay, never mind. Well,
What? You're making me feel like I did something important.
No. This might like shrink down our time period to like a specific time.
That's lovely, because I was just about to get to that as well.
So I looked up Little Eddie in the Snow, right? Just in Google. And the AI overview that Google gave me was the phrase Little Eddie in the Snow. So apparently it's a fucking phrase. Refers to Eddie the Eagle, who was that ski jumper. There's like that movie that
I
like
watched
Hugh
that movie
Jackman
about him when
was
it came
in.
out. Yeah.
He was that ski jumper. And he competed in 1988 in the Winter Olympics, and that was like his huge like breakout moment. He's been competing in the Olympics since 1928, which is weird because that means he's like 60 competing in 1988, which is crazy. But it says 1988 here, and so I think Little Eddie's in the Snow is referring to like maybe like a little mound of snow or something.
So this indicates that we are in the 80s as well, which is what I was about to get to.
Yes, so like mid to late 80s.
Because, listen, so he packs up his stuff from the college and goes to this hippie warehouse that he's gonna stay at. And it's cold and there's a hole in the roof and there's no heating and it's like 0 degrees outside and whatever, he's dying. But it says Playboy magazines from the 1970s littered the floor. This really narrows down our time period as well, because it says the 70s as a whole chunk. So we know we're not somewhere in the 70s, because it wouldn't say the 70s if we were still in that period. Yeah. So I feel like that makes it really clear that we're in the 80s if he says Playboy magazines from the 70s.
Yeah.
And then if this Eddie's phrase also indicates the 80s, I feel like we're really solidly narrowing in that this takes place in like the mid to late 80s.
Yes. We're gonna figure out the exact year this happened.
We're gonna figure out the exact year. We're like on the lookout for things. I'm so glad I found that Eddie's thing and that you figured out what it meant.
That's crazy,
I was just like,
actually.
I don't know what this means, and then like that helps us narrow down the fucking time period. That's phenomenal.
That's crazy. I mean, we could like analyze the description of like a doorknob or something to the year that they put out that doorknob or some shit, and like really get into it. But like just the little things, the little tiny details that she's given us.
There was a lot of use of payphones in this chapter as well.
Yes.
Which helps us narrow down the technology.
They don't have cell phones yet.
Yeah. But it just says he packed his suitcases and then walked into town to the address the hippie had given him over the telephone. So I was like, how the fuck if he was just given the address, did he find this place in this town he's not very used to? Did the hippie also give him directions, I assume?
Yeah.
The hippie gave him directions? Because it just says the address. And I was like, how did he just have the address and find it? I was confused.
Well, he's probably like, you know that warehouse area by the dam and like by Boulder Tap?
Then later, it's like, it was right where he said it would be, so then I assumed that he gave him like actual directions. But
he also said it was painted like bright purple or something.
Right. My favorite part was people just being like, why didn't you get an electric heater? And he was like, I'm not gonna lie, I came from California where it was really hot, and I didn't think of that. I barely knew they existed. It never occurred to me
I didn't know
that like other people. It never occurred to me that half of Vermont's population like wasn't experiencing the same cold I was going through. And I just relate to that so much because I just don't think of things a lot. Things that are obvious to other people just don't occur to me. And I relate to that because I'm good at school like Richard is. Like I feel like Richard is pretty like academically smart like I am. And I just like don't think of obvious things like that. And I just was like, damn, I felt that, Richard.
Also, like, how did he think that, like, the hippie guy was surviving? Like, how did
he didn't realize until later that the hippie guy, like, had a heated room, he said, and I thought that was so funny.
Yeah. What do you mean?
we find out that Henry is back later in the chapter, but on page 120 and 121 is when the guy he works for keeps being like, I didn't know your friend was here. Like, the guy with the glasses, the big one. And it's just like, that the old man is like kind of senile and crazy. So, and these are just like really one-off comments that Richard doesn't go into too much. So it's really easy to overlook these, but I was like, no, this is important, and I highlighted it, and what do you know? A couple pages later, we find out that Henry is in fact back. And then we find out that his middle name is Marchbanks, and I want to know what the fuck kind of middle name is Marchbanks, yes?
I like that the professor was like, you know who I'm talking about. Great big boy, where's glasses? And he's like, Henry? Bunny? Like, I don't know, what?
It's so funny. And I love that Richard was like, yeah, he mentioned my imaginary friend again. Like, Richard just thinks he's fucking crazy.
Great big boy. The big boy. The tall guy. With the glasses? Where does it say his name is Marchbanks? Oh yeah, it was like Henry gave Richard a pair of pajamas and it said his initials on it, and he's like, what does the M stand for? And he's like, Marchbanks. I don't want to talk about it.
It's so funny. Where is it? Page 125. Pair of silky Egyptian cotton cream-colored heavenly soft pajamas that say HMW, M for Marchbanks, in parentheses. It's such a one-off comment. What kind of middle name is that?
A fucking rich one.
I am a rich man. I'm gonna name my son Henry Marchbanks.
I also would like to say that we learned that Julian, the Greek professor, he was like super famous like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And Richard finds a Life magazine with Julian's picture on it with Vivian Lee. I don't know who that is. But Julian's in there, and then Richard asks Henry about Julian, and Henry's like, yeah, he's like he was friends with all these famous people like the Sitwells and T.S. Eliot and that one actress, that blonde lady, Marilyn Monroe. And he's like, Marilyn Monroe? And he's like, yeah, it was just like, it was in the newspaper once. And he's like, damn, okay. And so we learn a little bit more about Julian. Also, I would like to say that when Richard moved in with Henry gives him the master bedroom. He gives him his own bed. And then Richard's like, why don't you sleep in your own bed? And he's like, no, I'm going to sleep in the one in the back room with the bed that folds out the wall because I think it's a good place. I think it's good to change the place where one sleeps from time to time. I believe it gives one more interesting dreams. Henry is such an interesting person, and I like the way he
Henry's so interesting in a good way, and Bunny's so interesting in a bad way.
Yeah. I love it.
128 is where we find out for a fact that Bunny is poor. Henry says no matter what Bunny tells you to the contrary, he hasn't a cent and neither does his father. He also said Bunny's never had a cent of pocket money the entire time I've known him, and he has expensive tastes. That's unfortunate. And that just sums up what I, understood about Bunny, really liking to look rich.
He's like me, but I'm too scared to ask people for money.
Yeah, he has expensive tastes, but he's fucking poor. I also just like the little detail that, he's not very good at school, but he's a good artist. And instead of, sending him to, rich schools and colleges, even though he has, a lot of difficulties learning, he should have just been, had a painting apprenticeship or something, because that still would have been, a respectable, rich-looking thing to do, because his parents also care about looking rich. And, I just like that detail that he's a good artist.
What I want to know is, why he is in college for Greek. What is his interest in Greek?
I just think that his parents raised him to want to look rich, and studying the classics is such an old money thing to do. So he just has been interested in it. Because he's been studying Greek because his parents sent him to fancy boarding school type places, and I think he started learning Greek there to help with his dyslexia. And so he just kept it up because as he got older, he was like, this feels old money style.
Yeah, I guess.
I love on page 131, he's like, good to be back in the good old US of A, hamburger sizzling on an open grill and all that. Because when I know they were in, like, Italy or whatever, so maybe not there, but when I was in Europe, everywhere I went, they had such good hamburgers. England had good hamburgers. Netherlands had good hamburgers. It was so good. I didn't know Europeans knew how to make a hamburger like that. Like, it was better than American hamburgers, and I thought that was our fucking thing. But, like, good God, I had some of the best hamburgers of my life in Europe. And when he said that, I was just like, actually, Bunny, they know how to do a burger over in Europe. Every time I tell this to someone, they say it's because the quality of meat is better in Europe than it is here. But, like, even it's not just the quality of meat, dude. Like, they have to cook it well, and goddamn did they execute. Fucking good burgers. I had, like, 3 different places in 3 different countries, and all of them were so good. Do you have anything else about Chapter 3? Because I have 2 more comments.
No.
Okay, page 134, we overhear a conversation between Francis and Henry, and it's quite confusing. And even having read Chapter 4, I still can't quite make out what it's about.
Yeah, me neither.
Francis's voice is rising. He says, thinking about my God, but he's in a state. You can't tell me you know what he might. And then it's like, I don't care. You've done it now.
Actually, I do know what it means.
I've been in town 2 hours, and already I don't care. And then Henry like, we only hear Francis' side of the conversation because Henry's, like, murmuring. And he's like, it's a bit late for that. And then he's like, you don't like it? What about me? And then Francis just, like, leaves. And then Henry's like, will you call Bunny and ask him if he'd like to come over for a few minutes? So whatever Francis said made Henry finally want to talk to Bunny. I wonder what he wants to talk to Bunny about. Like, I don't actually know what that conversation entailed.
I think I know what he was talking about. I think
is this about? You go.
They were discussing whether they were going to tell Richard about what they did, and also if they were going to talk to Bunny about, like, shutting the fuck up, because I feel like I can't say actually.
Yeah, part of it.
Finish that thought.
Like the first part where he's like, my God, but he's in a state you can't tell me you know what he might. I think that's about Bunny. Like, Bunny's been in a state because I think this was Henry telling Francis about what happened in Europe, perhaps, with their
because you did a bad.
I did a bad. I'm sorry. And they're like, do you think Bunny might, like, tell the police? And then you've done it now. Is like about telling Bunny knowing, and then Henry, I think then Henry's like, should we tell Richard? And that's when Francis is like, it's a bit late for that, isn't it? And then Henry's probably like, I don't like keeping this from Richard, and then Francis is like, what about you don't like it? What about me? That's how I'm interpreting the conversation, and I'm curious how that convinces Henry to be like, okay, go tell Bunny I finally want to talk to him. I wonder what he says to Bunny when Bunny comes.
Because I don't know how far you did your bad, but
I told you, page 192.
Yeah, but I didn't read it, so I don't know. But right after Bunny finds out, Henry leaves. Like, he leaves. Like, right after that happens. And so they never really talk about it. And so I think that's what this chat between Bunny and Henry is going to be. Is them talking about it.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Do you want to explain your bad?
Yeah, okay. As we get into chapter 4, can you give a summary of chapter 4 and then I'll explain my bad?
Yeah. Okay, so chapter 4. Classes are about to start. I think it's like the week of
it's end of winter break. Everyone's about to come back.
Yeah. The twins still have not showed up. They wrote a letter saying that they'd come in. They're coming in late, so they're coming in like a couple days right before class starts. But on Tuesday, Richard says that everyone kind of just like disappeared. Like, he hasn't heard from Henry, he hasn't heard from Francis. he's only heard from Julian. Like, everyone else is kind of just, like, silent. He went to their, like, houses. He called them up. No answers, no nothing. Like, they weren't anywhere. He meets with Julian to, like, turn in his class form or something. And Julian's like, have you seen anyone? He's like, no, not recently. Like, everyone's just, like, gone. And he's like, weird. And he says that Henry is not strong as he looks. His eyes bother him and he has terrible headaches. And sometimes he has a difficult time, and then he trails off. I didn't think he was in a proper condition to travel, but it was lucky he didn't stay on, or he wouldn't have found you. And then Julian starts asking about, like, why he slept in a warehouse for the winter. Like, why didn't he have money to, like, stay in an apartment or something? And Richard was kind of, like, deflecting the question of him being poor. And Richard was like, I didn't want to ask for money. And then Julian's like, wow, you're better than I am, but your parents don't seem very fond of you, right? And then Richard says, they're not crazy about me. And then Julian says this. He says, you seem more of an orphan than our real orphans do. And then he's like, where are the twins? And then Richard's like, I have no idea. I haven't seen anyone in a while. And he goes on a couple days where he's like, I literally can't find anyone. And then he calls the countryside house, Francis's countryside house. And Francis picks up the phone, but he speaks in a, like, disguised voice. Like, he changes his voice. And Richard, like, knew that this was Francis because he's heard him talk in this voice before to, like, avoid other calls. And Richard doesn't say anything on the phone. He just, like, listens to Francis, like, say hello. And he's like, they're hiding. Like, he realizes, like, they're hiding and that he doesn't... They don't want him involved in it. So he's just like, okay, like, they're just, like, I guess they're just doing something without me. And so he hangs up the phone. And then he goes over to, he ends up going into, like, he has, like, insomnia, so he can't sleep, so he looks for this book that he uses for comfort. He realizes he's left it at Henry's house, and so he goes over to Henry's house at, I don't know what time. I feel like sometime in the morning or something. He goes over to Henry's house. Henry's not there. He walks into Henry's house. He has the key because he didn't give it back after moving out of his house. And he finds that the house looks like it's been ransacked. Like, there's just shit everywhere. There's suitcases. There's books everywhere. And Henry's not there. And it looks like the house has been robbed. Also, there's, like, dirty dishes everywhere. There's food. There's just rotting food on the counter. It's, like, disgusting. And he finds his book, and then he finds this piece of paper by the phone that says TWA 219 795 times 4. And it's written in by Henry, and he's like, this is weird, and there's a phone number on it, and so he calls the phone number, and he sees that it is from, like, an accounting firm, or, like, a lawyer's office or something. And he's like, weird, and then he dials, like, a directory to find the number for TWA. He calls that number and then figures out that it's like a flight. It's like a airline. And so Richard's like pretending to be Henry and is like, hey, can you, like, reconfirm the information on this reservation that I have? And so the woman reconfirms all this information about this flight. And so she's like, yeah, your flight to Argentina, your one-way trip, non-refundable tickets, you bought 4 tickets for Logan Airport at 8:45 p.m., going to Argentina, which equals, like, $3,180 plus tax. And Richard's like, holy shit. And then this is the moment where he realizes that Henry, Francis, Camilla, and Charles are running away. They're running from something, but he doesn't know what or why. And they're going to Argentina and not coming back. And so this is, like, a huge plot point, because you're like, what the fuck?
like, what the fuck happened? What the fuck did they do? And later it's revealed that they killed someone, and so they're running from that because Bunny knows, and they think that Bunny is gonna talk. He's gonna like tell everyone that they killed someone. But going back a few pages because I kind of skipped over this part, but Richard finds Bunny like sitting in like a common area in their dorm, just watching TV, and Bunny's like wasted for some reason. But he's like playing it off like he has a stomach flu. And Richard is like, Bunny's like acting super calm and like just like off. And Richard's like, what is wrong with everyone? And where are they? Like, are you mad at Henry or something? Like, what's happening? Did you have a fight in Rome? Or like, what's happening? And Bunny is like, Henry's not what you think he is. He's not what you think, or Julian thinks, or anyone else. Like, you don't know him like I do. Like, he had me fooled there for a second. And then Richard says he has an uncomfortable assumption that he thinks it's some sex-related thing that he's better off not knowing. And so he looks at Bunny and he's like, he looks petulant and irritable, and his glasses are like falling off his face. And then he says, might Henry have made a pass at him at Rome? And if he had, all hell would have broken loose, because Bunny's like highly homophobic. And Henry's a little queer, I will say that. And he says, I think it could not think of much of what else it could involve. Like such whispering and secrecy, other than it had such a strong effect on Bunny. He was the only one of us who had a girlfriend, and I'm pretty sure he slept with her. But at some time, he was incredibly prudish, touchy, and easily offended at Roop. Hypocritical. Besides, there was always something unquestionably odd about the way that Henry was constantly shelling out money to him, paying all the tabs, just like throwing money at Bunny. So he's like giving money to Bunny to like hide the secret that he found out. And so what Richard thinks is that Henry was being gay and tried to like make a move with Bunny, but then Bunny like rejected it and was like extremely offended by it, and they got in a huge fight. And then so Richard starts going into thinking, he starts analyzing everyone in the group, even Julian, on whether or not they're gay.
It's so funny.
This is like one of my favorite parts of the book. But he like goes over Julian. He's like, I know that Francis is gay, and I see it a little bit from Julian and Charles. And like I know they're interested in women, but like there's something about them that they like, you know, there's a little fruitiness in there. But then he's like, with Henry, I got like zero gayness from him. So like it's weird. He says Geiger counter's dead. His gaydar says 0, okay? He says, if anything, it was Camilla he seemed fondest of. Camilla he bent over attentively when he spoke. Camilla who was often the recipient of his infrequent smiles. So Henry has like a little thing for Camilla, I guess. And there's like no possible way that he could have been attracted to Bunny. And I just think it's so funny that about all the things that they could have fought over, it's that, oh, that Henry's gay and that Bunny was offended over it. But moving past that and him finding out that they're running away to Argentina, they ended up, classes started in like 2 days. Okay, he lived through the next day, and then he realized he had class. He was like, I'm gonna go into this class, and no one's gonna be there. It's just gonna be me, Bunny, and Julian. Like, they're gonna be gone. But he walks into class, and everyone's there. Everyone's there, and he's just like, what? And everyone's acting like nothing happened. And they're like, oh, hey, Richard, like, how you doing? And, you know, Bunny's telling a joke about, like, a jail sentence or something. Oh, also, when Bunny was drunk and Richard was talking to him, he's like, what was the fight about? And
Bunny says, it's not a question of money, you see? He didn't need it himself. It's the principle of the thing. He wants to know that other people like him, not for his money, but for himself. And then Richard says, it's not about money? He says, no. And Bunny's like, Richard's like, then what is it about? And Bunny just leans forward and is like, can you make me some coffee? And then that's where that conversation ends. Like, it just ends there. He never says why or what the argument was about. But he goes to class, everyone is there. And Richard's, like, super confused. And everyone's like, hey, how are you? Like, sorry, I've been ignoring you for the past couple days. Like, we're here now. And the twins are there, and he goes over and, like, asks, like, where the twins have been. The twins say that their car broke down or something. They had to go stay at Francis's countryside house for a few days and blah, 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 blah. And they made up this random story that was clearly very untrue, and even Richard knew that. And then Henry showed up at Richard's dorm at night and was like, hey, let's go to this estate sale. The estate sale was a fail. And then they went out to dinner.
That was so random, may I add.
It kind of was, yeah.
It was like he wanted to talk to him, but, like, couldn't work up the nerve to. So he was, like, just doing a random task with him to, like, build up the nerve.
Yeah. And so they eventually went back to Francis's apartment, Henry and Richard. Francis was not there, but they just went to his apartment. And they sat down and had some, I think, whiskey or something, or coffee. And Henry just, like, starts the conversation being like, don't you want to know how our trip to Argentina went? And, Richard's like, yes, I do. And then Henry's like, don't you want to know how I know that you know? And then Richard's like, fuck. He knows that I know that I knew that where he was going. Fuck. And then so they talk about their conversation that we'll get more into later on. And then they talk about, like, saving a bunch of money and how they were gonna, like, leave Bunny out, and that they're running away to Argentina because Henry's dad, like, owns a bit of land in Uruguay, and so they're going to Argentina and then going to Uruguay and living there for the rest of their life. And then Richard's just like, why were you running away? And Henry's like, you don't know? And Richard's like, no. And Henry's like, really think about it. And then he, like, thinks about everything that's been happening. And Richard's like, you killed someone. And Henry's like, I knew you were smart enough to figure it out. And Richard's like, you fucking killed someone? And he's like, it was an accident, but yes, we did. And then he's
so casual about it. It's so funny.
Yeah, and he's even smiling at some parts. He's like, you figured it out. Like, wow, like, good for you. Yeah, we killed someone. And he kind of explains, like, how or why they did the dynastic ritual, which they spoke about way back when in, like, chapter 1 or 2, which I told you to remember, because they tried to attempt it for, like, a couple weeks where they tried a bunch of different methods, and then they realized that Bunny was the problem because he wasn't taking it as serious as everyone else. So they left out Bunny for one of the nights, and then they did it successfully, and they ran through the woods for miles and miles under this, like, hypnotic insanity. And at one point, like, Camilla thought she was a deer, and the other people, the guys thought they were, like, wolves, and they were chasing a deer through the woods. But the one thing I want to mention is that, Richard's like, isn't this a sex ritual? And Henry's like, yes. And Richard's like, you want to tell me about that? Like, what was that about? Henry's like, no, we're gonna skip over that part. That's not important. And so they never mention, like, what happened, but it's implied that they fucking had an orgy in this fucking woods, which I think is crazy. I think that's crazy, because there's only one woman in there. And I think that's a little scary. But they ran through the woods, and then they came back to consciousness when they realized that they had killed a man. Henry seems to be the front man for killing this farmer. And the way they described it was like they came back to consciousness, and the guy, his brains were everywhere, which just mean they cracked through his skull, but they didn't have any weapons on them. So they literally
Henry's just that strong.
He is, and that's said back in like chapter 2, where he like beat the shit out of that guy, that huge beefy dude, and like broke his ribs and shit. And so Henry literally broke open this man's skull and just smushed his brains. And then it's also said that Charles like pulled his arm out and like cracked his arm. So like Charles and Henry were two of the people that were explicitly said to have taken a part in this murder. Francis we don't know, Camilla we don't know, but it is said they were covered in blood too. It's also said that Henry says that they saw the god Dionysus, because it's the Dionysic ritual created by Dionysus. And they're like, yeah, we saw Dionysus. Like, full-fledged, like, what you think Dionysus looks like, that's what Dionysus looks like.
That's what they saw.
What I think is cool as fuck. So they killed the guy, and then Richard's like, what did you do? And he's like, we just went home, and, like, we got rid of everything, and we just pretending like everything was normal. Which is also where you go back to chapter 2, and that was the conversation between Camilla and Charles outside of Richard's room, where they're arguing over the sheets. Because the sheets were what they turned into, like, their what was it? The chatons or something that they were wearing? The little togas? That's what they were arguing over, the sheets. And they just, like, went back, and then Richard was like, so does Bunny know? And then Henry's like, yeah, he fucking knows, and he's been taunting us for the past month and a half now. Or I guess the past couple of weeks. And that's where kind of chapter 4 ends, is that we just know that Bunny knows. And now, so not everyone knows about what happened.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that this book started off with Bunny's dead, but Bunny's not dead yet.
Someone else
killed
is dead.
a man. Someone else is dead. Someone that's not Bunny is dead. And the first time I read that shocked me, because I was like, they fucking killed someone and it's not Bunny. That's weird. You want to tell them you're bad?
Yeah, I can say the bad. So at the end of the chapter, we are left knowing that they killed someone, and that Bunny is being an ass about it. It says
Bunny
I never dreamed we'd hear anything else about it. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Bunny has seen to that. What do you mean? He saw him this morning. He's driven us half mad over this. And then the chapter ends, and I'm like, well, whoa. We know that they killed a man and that Bunny wasn't there, and then they came back and they were like, I hope that's the end of it, but now Bunny's not shutting up about it. So I'm like, what the fuck? How does Bunny know? That's not clear. I know they're going to tell me in chapter 5, but I knew I'm not supposed to read to chapter 5, so I did a middle ground where I didn't properly read chapter 5. I speed read the dialogue to figure out how Bunny knew, and once I got my answer, I stopped reading chapter 5, and now I know how Bunny knows.
Which is very bad.
I'm not supposed to know that. I did it bad, and I'm really sorry, and I debated trying to keep it a secret, but I felt too bad. I'm just like Bunny for real. I had to confess.
It's one of the worst bads you could have done.
I'm so sorry, but you know how it is. You've read this book, and I'm sure when you read that, you had to keep reading as well. Like, you knew what I was going through.
Yeah, but I didn't have to wait.
I know, I'm sorry, I did it bad. Is this why Bunny was crabby at the end of last semester? Because he felt left out? That they did the ritual without him? Because we know that Bunny was crabby at the end of last semester. We didn't. It didn't really say why. And I was like, is it because they left him out of the ritual and they went to do it without him?
Page 94 was so long ago. Towards the end of the term, he had a flare-up of asthma and wandered wheezing around the house in pajamas bathrobe. The pills he took for it, I was informed behind his back, made him irritable, kept him up at night, it made him gain weight, and I accepted this explanation for much of Bunny's crabness at the end of the term, which is subsequently I was to find was due to entirely different reasons. Yeah, maybe. Probably.
Okay, cool. Because yeah, I just figured that's what he was in a bad mood about, but it wasn't like super clear. So
I also want to reference back to. I'm gonna find it in my map. I forgot where I put it.
Bunny had a maddening. Towards the end of the term, for instance, Bunny had a maddening habit of breaking out into choruses of The Farmer in the Dell. I merely found it annoying and could not understand the violent agitation to which it provoked the rest of them, not knowing then, as I do now, that it must have chilled them all to the bone.
Hold on, can we get to that in a little bit? I want to go in order.
Sure.
Oh, but that was last semester, right? When he did that?
Yeah, so my thing is, I think he knew before they went to Italy. Like, he did. Because it explains that in chapter 5. Oh, really? Does it now? In the chapter that we haven't read yet?
Yeah. He did.
So he found out before he went to Italy.
And
so he's been taunting them.
Was he in a bad mood because they weren't telling him that they murdered someone? Did he just
I think
feel
it was
left
just
out
the whole incident. It was everything.
It was everything. He was just feeling really left out, and so he was in a pissy mood.
He's like, you guys murdered someone without me? How could you?
You guys fucked without me. You guys did the ritual and it worked without me, and then you murdered someone. Now you're not even telling me. God damn it.
No, I think when they got the orgy part of the ritual, he's like, I'm not into that gay shit, and probably like waited in behind a bush or something.
Okay, I want to go in order my notes of chapter 4. When Richard and Bunny are talking, and he says, names. I know, God, and they all have the same vibe to them. Yeah. And he says, Henry isn't what anybody thinks he is. What does he mean by that? I know Richard thinks he means a homosexual, and I think that's funny as shit. That Richard is like, well, the only thing I could possibly think of when Bunny says Henry isn't what we think he is that he's gay. Like, that's so funny. But what does Bunny actually mean? Does he mean a murderer? Does he mean a cheapskate? Because, like, I know he's pissed that Henry's not giving him more money.
Leading towards he's a murderer, but I also feel like he's gonna call him, like, a sociopath of some sort.
Bunny's the sociopath, Jesus Christ. And then Richard thinks he means that he's gay, and then it leads to page 141, which is so funny. This is like my favorite part of the book. Richard just explains. Richard just goes, I have a really good gaydar. Here's how gay every single person in this book is on a scale from 1 to 10. Let me explain. It's so funny. He says, I, being rather more disinclined that way than not. Does that mean that Richard likes men, or does that mean that Richard is homophobic?
Where does it say that?
Page 141, when he's saying he lived with Henry, he said, I, being rather more disinclined that way than not, am quick to pick up on gay tension. I can't tell if he's saying he's gay or if he's saying he's homophobic. Because if it said I being rather more inclined that way than not, that would mean he's gay, but it's the opposite. So I think he's saying he's homophobic but has a good gaydar.
I think he's just saying that he's not gay. Because he's definitely not homophobic. Or I guess it's more like an internalized homophobic.
And then just the way he words it, he's basically, I'm more not gay than not gay. That's what he said right there. He said, listen, I'm really good at picking up on gay tension because I'm not gay. That's what he said. Which is so weird. I'm good at picking up on gay tension because I'm more not gay than gay. What? Which still means he's a little bit gay.
That's why it's an internalized homophobia.
He's so weird. So then he just goes, like, I lived with Henry for a month and it didn't feel gay. And then I know that Francis is really gay and Julian's a little bit gay and Charles is a teeny bit gay. But like, Henry's not gay.
Yeah.
So funny.
And he says,
Okay.
and even if there was a side of him of which I was unaware, which was possible, was it possible that he was attracted to Bunny? The answer seemed almost unquestionably no. Not only that he behaved that if he wasn't attracted to Bunny, he acted if he hardly was able to stand him.
He said even if he is gay, he's not gay for Bunny.
Yeah, and he's like, he's disgusted by Bunny in what appeared to be virtually all respects, and be far more disgusted in that particular one than I would be. It was possible for me to recognize in a general some sort of way that Bunny was handsome, but if I had brought the lens any closer and tried to focus on him in a sexual light, all I got was repugnant Miyasama? I don't know what that means. Miyasama? Of sour-smelling shirts and muscles gone to fat and dirty socks. Girls didn't seem to mind that sort of thing, but to me, he was about as erotic as an old football coach. And I think that's hilarious. Also, girls are not into that sort of thing. I'm just gonna say that now.
I think girls would be into Henry.
I'm in the Henry.
Everyone's into Henry. Okay, so he just has the great idea, because he needs this book, to just go into Henry's apartment because he has the key, and he's like, why the fuck not? Which I think is so funny. And he finds his apartment's a fucking mess, which is unnerving because Henry's very clean. It says it feels like he stumbled on the scene of a crime. Crazy foreshadowing. And then he finds a scrap of paper, and we learn very quickly what's on the scrap of paper. It's the airlines, it's the confirmation number, it's the price times for a flight times 4, and it's the phone number, I think, for it's the phone number for a law office, which is interesting.
Yeah, because it was written in Francis's handwriting. Because we learn later that Francis had to go to a lawyer's office to like pick up his trust fund money.
Right, that's what that was for.
He didn't have the money because his mom took it all at the beginning of the year. And so they didn't have the money to be able to leave the country and go live in Argentina.
It's crazy that they would have fucking left the country if his mom didn't do that. Like, that's insane. But I know that it was written on the back of an overdue library notice, and that's important because it tells us it's recent. It said it was dated only 3 days before. That 3 days is important, like, time frame-wise. But I'm curious, the only thing we don't learn is I wonder what the library book was for. Like, I wonder why he went and checked something out of the library while planning on leaving the country. Like, I'm just curious what the book was.
It's Henry, he's always reading.
I know, I'm just curious, like, if it was overdue, I'm curious if he was just taking it with him. Like, I wonder what the book was, and if it, like, served any purpose for their plan.
I think Henry never returned any of his library books. That's a headcanon.
Headcanon, Henry has a pile of library books that he stole, and he never goes to the same library twice.
Yeah.
whatever. It's like freaked out that they're leaving in 3 days to go to Argentina, and it's like, why the fuck, we don't really know. But then, so he's alone, no one's talking to him, and then a frat boy comes up to him, and some frat boys come up to him, and they're trying to get him to like get some money for like a party that night to buy alcohol, and he says something in Greek in his head when they're trying to get him to like give more money, and I translated what he said to roughly, the masses do not speak Greek. And he's so pretentious. That's such a... The frat boys are like, give us some money for alcohol, and he just goes, oh boy, the masses do not speak Greek. That's so pretentious. What a little shithead.
Doesn't he say... Is that the hoi pioi
hoi pioi barbori?
He sounds like that one... He sounds like that sketch SpongeBob.
Oh my god.
Character.
That's what I translated that to. And...
Minoi. Wait, can I say one of my favorite quotes?
Yeah.
So in this paragraph, he's like describing the two kids. And he says one of them's the son of a movie producer. And he had a piggish, schizophrenic glitter about the eye that I did not care for at all. And I think that's a crazy description. And I love it. And they called him, his nickname is Party Pig. Which is crazy. And his name is Judd. Judd Party Pig Jones.
I love Judd Party Pig. He's so funny.
Boy, boy.
So then he talks to Bunny again. He talked at the beginning of the chapter, and he was like, Henry's not what you think he is. And then he keeps calling people, no one's answering. He had that like thing where he knew it was Francis in the country home, making his voice deeper, but he was like, why is he hiding this from me?
He also calls Francis's mom back in Boston. He's like, hey, is Francis there? And his mom's like, what? No, he's at school. And he's like, oh, yeah, he is at school. And his mom's like, is something wrong? He's like, no. Oh my god, Francis, hi. Sorry. And then he hangs up.
That was so funny. I love how he lies. But he runs into Bunny again, and Bunny just like randomly steals someone's food from like the fridge and like sticks his gum inside like
his trash can.
Richard's trash can, and Bunny's just such an asshole. And he tries to hide it. And it's so stupid. And
yeah.
Bunny's trying to figure out talking to Richard, trying to figure out if Richard knows they killed someone, is my reading of this. Like,
he's also trying to figure out if he knows where the others went, because he's like, have you seen Henry? Like, he hasn't. I went to his house, all his lights were off, his car's gone. And then Richard, already knowing that they are running away, he's like, okay, Bunny doesn't know, so I have to cover up for them. So he shows that Richard still has Henry's car because he used it to move back to the dorm, and he didn't give it back. And so he shows Bunny Henry's car like parked in the back parking lot behind the dorm. He's like, see, his car's right here. He's like somewhere on campus, probably at the library or something. And so also it's mentioned later that Henry's like, thank you for covering up for us. Like, why did you do that?
I'm getting to that.
Because you didn't know. And Henry's like, Richard's like, I don't know why I did it.
I love that conversation. I'm going to get to that in like 2 comments. I just want to say, before we get there, on page 151, that's when Bunny makes that Jewish comment that you said would be coming.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes.
That's fucked up. Ignoring that, moving past that.
We're not even
the amount that Bunny mischaracterizes Henry on that page is genuinely bonkers bananas. He's like... He said, I never heard anybody complain so much about helping out an old pal. And, like, he's basically just like, he's a cheapskate, which is funny because he's eating cheesecake as he's calling Henry a cheapskate. And it's just so ridiculous because Bunny's fucking broke and takes advantage of everyone else's money. And Henry is like, throws money at him, like so ridiculously generous to Bunny specifically. And Bunny's complaining that, like, it's not enough money. It's like, it's genuinely ridiculous how ungrateful he is. Like, it doesn't even occur to him to be grateful, and he's literally, like, the opposite. He's like, I love him, but, like, between you and me, why, like, he just complains about giving me money. He's such an asshole about it. What the fuck? What the fuck? Like, these 2 pages made me hate Bunny even more. Oh my god.
And he never redeems himself.
But yet you still feel bad when he dies.
Oh, we're getting there.
My knuckles are shiny.
Okay, I don't have any comments for like the next 10 pages, and then finally, Henry talks to him.
I do.
You go.
So, in that, I think I mentioned this before when I was doing the overview of the chapter, but when Bunny was having that conversation about Henry, Richard's like asking Bunny like what their argument was about. He's like trying to get into it. And Bunny's just like not giving, like he's not giving anything. For some reason, it's like the group is so scared that Bunny is gonna like say something, but he refuses to tell Richard about it, which is weird. Like he doesn't tell him at all, which is so strange.
Right?
But Richard's like, I was surprised. He was surprised that like he was saying all these things about Henry. And so Richard's like, it's not about money? He's like, no. And then he's like, what is it about? And then he just like refuses to talk about it. And then he just leaves his room. And then he's thinking about Argentina. And the weekend passes by. And he's just like alone. And he says, my feelings were hurt and I missed them more than I would have admitted. Bunny was behaving oddly besides. I saw him with Marion and her friends, and then Cloak as well. And he was just like anxiously waiting for Greek class. He went to Greek class, and it's kind of like when it's like, you know, in those like movies where it's like the parents go on vacation and the kids have a party and the parents are like, they're having a party, and so they like run home. Then they bust through the door and the kids are just like sitting on the couch watching a movie, and they're like, hey, you guys are home early. And they're like, where's the party? They're like, what party? What are you talking about? They're like, you were having a party. I'm like, no, I don't, what are you talking about? That was exactly this situation when Richard walked through that door to Julian's class, because he walks through and he literally like ran to the class, but he's like, no, I can't run to the class. I have to be calm. I have to just like pretend like nothing weird is gonna happen. And he walks through the door, and everyone's there. He says they were all there, all of them, the twins, poised in the windowsill. Francis with his back to me, Henry beside me, and Bunny across the table, telling a story of some sort. He's telling another jail joke, because early in chapter 2. He says he was also doing another jail joke earlier, relating to like a sentence or something, and it was making everyone like super uneasy and weird. And so now he's doing it in a super mocking way, because now everyone's back, and Bunny's like, you guys are back and you did something, but I don't know exactly what, but you did something, and so I'm gonna push it even further and mock you. And nobody really greets him. Everyone kind of just like shyly looks at him. And Bunny's like, oh, come in, dude. Like, we're all having a party in here. Like, yeah, let's get excited. And says the twins glance up, startled like a pair of deer. Tightness around the jaw. Henry was serene.
Like a pair of deer is crazy.
Yeah.
They pretend they hit a deer with their car. There was the thing where Camilla was a deer. Like,
yeah.
There's multiple deer references in this chapter. That's wow. Everything in this book is wow.
Francis was so white he was almost green. Bunny's acting like everything was completely normal. Everyone else is a little weird. Charles and Camilla. This is the first time that he's seeing the twins since everyone's kind of gotten back in town. So he goes over to them and is like, hey, what's going on? Like, where have you guys been? and they're like trying to talk over Bunny because Bunny's being loud as fuck. And Camilla's like, oh yeah, like, oh, I'm so sorry, like, how are you? Like, we haven't heard from you in so long. Like, our apartment got, like, we just, like, couldn't get into our apartment, and we left the key in Virginia, and we had to drive all the way back, and, like, our grandma had to, like, mail it or something. And then Richard's like, I thought you guys were subletting it to someone. And they're like, oh, yeah, they, like, went back early and, like, took the key. And, like, we told them to mail it, but it like, took too long, so, like, we've just been staying at Francis's countryside house for a while. Sorry we haven't, like, called or anything, we've just been, like, so busy, but then, like, when Francis was driving us out there, we got stuck, because, like, the car broke down, and we ran into a ditch, and then we were all, like, stuck out there, blah, 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 and then, they had to walk to the house, and for days they were like calling Henry, and Henry wasn't like answering. So, you know, it's like, oh, it's so crazy. Like, oh, we couldn't, like, we just like weren't thinking of it. And then we got to the house. There was like no food. There was like no one there, and so like we were just eating Bisquick and olives, and it was like, oh yes, we ate Bisquick and olives. And it's like, oh, so crazy. We totally weren't running away to Argentina or anything. And then, like, Julian comes in, and he's like, oh, well, everyone's here, like, yay, where have y'all been? And then they go and explain the story to Julian. And then this part on page 155, it says, Bunny's jailhouse jokes had, for some reason, unsettled me. Though I remembered him telling an awful lot of jokes like that back in the fall. They had been met with, then as now, with strained silence. But then they were just silly bad jokes. So back in the fall when he was telling them, they were just bad jokes. But now it's actually, he's doing it intentionally. Also it says, I had always assumed the reason he told me that was because of he had some corny old lawyer's joke book open in his room or something. Right up there with the Bob Hope biography and the Fu Manchu novels and the Men of Thought and Deed, which was actually, turns out he did have that book. And then Julian says this. He's like, why didn't you call me if you guys were, like, struggling?
Which I want you to, like, think, like, Julian seems like a minor character here. But, Julian, they, I don't want to, like,
say anything. But I don't know how to say this.
What are you trying to say?
I can't say it yet. But
Julian is attached to these things. Which is also maybe, I don't know if you have this in your list, you probably do. But back to the question of Henry and Julian in the hallway, where they're like, should I do what's necessary?
Oh, that is in my notes to talk about, actually.
I don't know what at point of the year they had that conversation. I feel like it was pretty early, not gonna lie, but
or no, this was after, like, everyone started acting weird, and then he thought that everyone hated him. And then he went to turn in his, like, papers to resign from the major or something, and then he saw this conversation. So I guess it was after it happened. Do you want to talk about that right now?
Yeah, let me say a couple things that happened before that, and then we can talk about that. So, page 162 and 163 is like right before. Page 163 is when it's revealed they killed someone, and right before that, they have that whole conversation where Richard's like, "What the fuck have you done?" And Henry's like, "Well, you already know. So why have you been covering for us?" And he's like, you've known that, like, we didn't tell you we were leaving the country, but you knew, and you could have stopped us, and you didn't." And I love that Richard is just like, I don't know. Like
he's like, I just did. I don't know why.
it's just it's just like that's gay. He doesn't know that it's gay, but like
I think he just loves them all like so much.
He
that
does.
He like, didn't want to lose them because he said he missed them a lot when they just disappeared.
and then but then it's just like he knew they were leaving for good, and he could have stopped them, and he didn't. And he could have like tried to stop them to not lose them. I don't know. But then he's like, Henry, what the fuck have you done? And Henry's like, well, you tell me, which is so fucking cocky. And Richard is just like, you killed somebody, didn't you? And I thought that was crazy, but like,
I love that.
It's just interesting to me because we get Richard's point of view, and like Richard was so confident and had figured it out, but like I didn't figure that out. Like, you know that something weird is going on, and it's confusing and unsettling, but I didn't put together that they killed someone. It was just like it was a thought. It was a thought, like, ooh, maybe, but like he was just like he knew, and I didn't know.
I think in the last minutes when he was like sitting here and literally putting it together, he realized that there's really no reason for them to be running away.
Right.
Because his original thought was, oh, Henry was gay with Bunny, and Bunny found that like disgusting, and so they had a big fight. But then that's not a reason for like all of them to
run away.
Literally leave the continent. So he's like, the only other explanation would be you killed someone.
And this part baffled me because the book opens with Bunny being killed.
Yes.
And
you're
you
like,
find out
minute,
that
Bunny's
they killed
not dead,
someone.
but you killed someone.
And it's right. I'm like, I know damn well Bunny's still alive. You killed a different person. That really threw me off. And then it makes you find out the story of the murder, and it clears up the farmer in the dell, because that's literally who they killed, right? Just like this random farmer in the middle of fucking nowhere. And then when Richard gets to class, Bunny's making all these jokes about like people in jail like getting the death sentence, and like that immediately clears up. And just like you said, the Dionysus ritual thing was important. Which makes everything from chapter 2 that I was like, what's going on? Like, you know something's going on, you're hearing and seeing snippets of things that you're not supposed to, and you don't really know what it is. It makes all of that make sense, like the dirty bed sheets and like everything that Richard is like stumbling upon. The only thing I don't understand is the conversation between Henry and Julian, where Julian's like Henry's like, should I do what I must? And Julian's like, only do what you must.
And that
I don't know what that's
about more later.
Okay, that's the only thing that doesn't make sense still. Page 168 really casually says that they all fucked. Just they gloss over that pretty quick, but like the twins fucked. They all fucked. That's gay. There's incest. I'm so intrigued, and they just gloss over that very quickly.
Oh, you'll hear more about it.
So that left me with the question of how did Bunny know? Because Bunny's being a dick about it, like like the farmer in the dell, the jail jokes, and then the chapter.
2 days.
I couldn't wait. I tried, and I was like, I had to keep reading. So now I know how Bunny knows, and then I stopped. I didn't keep reading. So once I got my answer. You have anything else to say?
Yes. So, I guess the question for the people listening who haven't read this book or aren't reading it with us is, why wasn't Richard included in this at all? Like, why was Richard left out?
And he asks Henry that. On 165, Richard says, why didn't I know about any of this? And Henry's like, really? Like, you don't know? Like, it's obvious, like, why we didn't bring you into this.
He was like, that's the most obvious thing yet. We just don't know you that well.
He's just like, I don't get it. And then Henry's like, of course we weren't going to tell you. We hardly knew you. You would have thought we were crazy. We had almost nothing to go on. And I suppose in a certain way, I was misled by accounts of the Pythia. which was like the fucking insanity shit they went on. Those processes, though sketchy, are well more documented than the Bacchic methods. I thought for a while that the two must be related. Only for a long period of trial and error did become evident that they didn't include him because they didn't know him. Like, he was new. Like, they all had known each other for probably at least a year or two. And this new guy came in, and they're like, okay, we're gonna do this insane...
Like, would you do this fucking batshit crazy ritual with the guy you just met? No.
Yes. I mean, hey, I like, if they told me that they did this without me, I'd be like, why the fuck did I want to do that? Like, I want to do this. Like, let me in. Let me in. I want to do it. I want to get drunk and high and poisoned and go fucking insane and run through the woods. Like, get me in there. I want to do it. Come on.
God.
Like, I understand. Like, they don't know how Richard's gonna react to.
But like, he's just as. Like, he was just as in awe about the Dionysic ritual as they were when Julian was reading about it. Like, he was sitting. Like, it says he was like sitting there in awe, jaw dropped, like listening to Julian speak about this ritual. And then Henry says he became obsessed with it.
They didn't realize.
And I also thought it was weird that they did it while, like, they invited him to that countryside, but then they did it while he was there.
Why did the twins invite him? The twins wanted him in. Why did they invite him? Twins wanted to fuck him.
Like, it was... Like, it's like, why did they invite him if they didn't, like, want him to know? You know, it's so much harder hiding it than just, like, not including him at all.
This is where we got... This part of the book is where we got the line where it says that Bunny's the only one with a girlfriend, which confirms that Francis and Camilla aren't dating, like you said.
Yes.
My understanding now, do you want my current, like, prediction of the plot?
Yes.
Is that they just get so freaked out about Bunny spilling that they killed someone that they kill Bunny and make it look like an accident.
Okay.
That's what seems like is going on now.
Right, because you read that in chapter 5.
Yes. I found out how Bunny knew, but even by the end of chapter 4, I did know that Bunny knew, I just didn't know the how, and I knew that Bunny was driving them crazy over it, because Henry literally says, I'm at the end of my rope at the end of chapter 4, and we know the farmer in the dell, and we know he's making the jail jokes, like, we already know he's not keeping his mouth shut. Chapter 5 just goes more into that. Like, Bunny's really not keeping his mouth shut. Like, he has no concept that this is a serious matter, like, even a little bit.
Okay.
The closest thing that... This is going into chapter 5 a bit more, but, like, the only thing is that he knows that if they go down, he'll go down with them, because there's no proof that Bunny wasn't there when they killed the man. Like, they can make it seem like Bunny was there too, essentially. So he won't go to the police because he'll get in trouble for it with the rest of them. But he's not keeping his fucking mouth shut. Like, he just keeps making jokes about it. And I think it's literally driving them insane, especially Henry. And the prologue does say killing Bunny was Henry's plan. And... Well, it doesn't say that. It just says that Bunny's dead and that this was Henry's plan. So my current prediction is that they need to get rid of Bunny to put this all behind them. Because Bunny won't let it go. And so they kill Bunny and make it look like an accident.
Okay.
And that's why this is all happening at the beginning of the book. Because it's kind of crazy that, like, we're at the beginning of the book still, and it's like, yeah, we killed a man. Because this is leading up to why they kill Bunny. Like, this is, like, the setup to why they need to kill Bunny.
Yes. And we're not even halfway through the book yet.
Exactly.
I think after chapter 5, we'll be halfway through. Chapter 5 is so long. It's, I think, 100 pages.
These chapter 3 and 4 made me like Henry even more and made me like Bunny even less. We got to see a bit more of Francis, and I like Francis. I wish we see more of him. But we got a little bit more of him in these chapters.
Yes.
And I'm really liking the book. It reads like a classic, but it holds my attention. And I like I said, I couldn't stop reading. I had to find out more, which is exactly what you want a book to do to you. And I'm excited to read chapter 5 properly and finish chapter 5
for the first time, right?
I only read the first 20 pages of them, and I didn't even read them properly.
Sure.
I was just speed reading the dialogue until I found out how Bunny knew.
Sure.
Okay, do you have anything else? That's all I wanted to say.
My interest in this book never
goes away. I just want to read it over and over and over again. I don't think this book ever gets old. Because usually when I read a book, I just put it away and don't touch it for years and then pick it up again. But this book I literally read 2 months ago. And now I'm reading it again and I still love it just as much as it doesn't get old. Ever.
It doesn't get old. This is such a good book. This is the best book of all time.
Truly. It is.
This is the first time in about 10, literally I think exactly 10 years that I have a new favorite book. When I was 11, I read Michael Vey in 2 days, and Michael Vey has been my favorite book ever since. And this is the first time in 10 years I have a new favorite book.
Damn. Good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I still love Henry and the twins. Like Francis a little bit more. Francis and Henry are kind of the leading people here right now because they're the ones who are talking about, the plan, their future plan of what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And the twins are kind of just catching up to it, and Bunny's completely oblivious to what's going to happen to him. And Richard is just now figuring out everything, which I think is crazy.
It's kind of funny. I love that we get this from Richard's point of view. I'm excited to talk about during our last episode, how what parts of this are based on true events. I'm excited to talk about that.
I'm excited too.
I haven't looked into it because I don't want spoilers, but I know.
There's not a lot about it.
I found an Instagram reel about it just on accident, and I saw the beginning explaining how it was based on true events, and I sent it to you, but I didn't watch it because I didn't want anything to be spoiled for me. I just heard the beginning, and I was oh, saving this for later, and I sent it to you.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have.
Outro time? We were only 2 hours today.
Thank God.
Thank you guys for joining us today for chapters 3 and 4 of The Secret History. We did chapters 1 and 2 last week. We're gonna be doing the rest of the book all month. We have 3 or 4 more weeks of this series. Usually we talk about movies, but we're doing a book talk series. And we're really enjoying this, and we hope you guys are too. You should subscribe while you're here if you're enjoying us listening to us talk about this book. You can check out our other episodes where we talk about movies or play games and hang out. We're really chill, silly guys. Thank you guys. Have a good day.
Have a good night.
Usually we say good night, but it's daytime now. Goodbye.
Goodbye.